screen with you right now so that we can get started. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the subject is economics. Yes, economics. And the topic we're looking at is
International trade.
yes, international. Okay. So before we move into the topic per se, before we talk about international trade, we need to get familiar with the keyword there, which is trade. Keyword trade, or rather, I would like to state some objectives, some things you will need to be familiar with at the end of this lesson. So let me say, at the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the term. You should be able to explain the term international trade. Then you should be able to mention and explain types of international trade. Also, to identify the terminologies used in international trade. Then to state the differences and similarities between international trade and internal trade. And the next thing is to state the reasons for international trade, and also to be able to state the barriers or problems of international trade, as well as the advantages and disadvantages of international trade. Then to list and explain the division of international trade, and also to state the procedures for international. So these are the 9 objectives that you should be able to get familiar with, and this is the area that WAEC will ask question on based on the topic international trade. So, like I said, before we go on, trade, international trade, let's just know what is the meaning of trade itself. What's the meaning? When you hear the term trade, you can talk about when somebody say, what is your uncle's occupation or your auntie's occupation or somebody's occupation? They will say, oh, he's into trading. Or I just say, very soon I'll be going into trading. That means I'm trying to say I'm going into business, business of buying and selling something which might be good and which might be services. So buying and selling of goods and services is known as trade. So let me just put up the definition as I clear the screen. So we'll talk about trade. Let me try to erase this space. So trade simply means buying and selling. Trade is the action of buying and selling goods and services. For example, if I issue a sentence, they move to ban all trade in ivory. That means all buying and selling of ivory is about to be banned. That's what the sentence is saying. So trade is just business, and business involves buying and selling of goods, buying goods from markets, coming back to sell it. That's what trade is about. Now, something that looks like that is what is called trademark. Trademark. So you must have heard something like trademark before. So trademark is like a symbol. Let's look at the meaning of that. Trademark of a particular company. It's like a symbol or a word, a logo, or words that are legally registered or that are established by use as representing a company or a product. So no other person or no other product or no other company can use it. For example, if you hear close up is toothpaste, but call it close up because that is the trademark. No other toothpaste maker can come and begin to name their own close up. They are going to be violating illegally registered trademark. So that is what trademark is all about. Because we are talking about international trade, that's why I have to go to that dimension to explain some terms that you trademark. Trademark a symbol or word, or words legally registered or established by use as representing a company or a product. So that is what trademark is all about. Now, let's move on to the business of the day, which is international trade. Yeah, international trade is also known as foreign trade. And this is a trade that involves exchange of goods. External trade that involves exchange of goods and services between two or more countries. You might not necessarily put down the full notes, because I'm going to make the notes available to you probably at the end of the day or tomorrow. So I should be able to make the notes available to you. So, talking about international trade, I want to clear the screen now to these things so that we can talk about what international trade is. Yeah, this is it. Let me try to move this side. So, hold on. Let me clear the screen so that screen can contain all of the notes. Okay. So international trade is also known as foreign trade, as it has been said. I want to bring it up now so you can see the full details. Yes, it's better. So I believe you can see it now. International trade is also known as foreign trade or external trade, which involves the exchange of goods and services between two or more countries. It becomes international because it cuts across the nations. So the principle underlying the buying and selling of goods and services between one country and another is called specialization. It's called specialization. So the theory of international trade, therefore, is based on the principle of comparative cost, as propounded by David Ricardo. So the theory states that a country should specialize in the production, the country should specialize in the production of goods and services for which it has cost advantage over another country. If you are going to be producing a commodity and it's going to be more expensive than another country, then you are not supposed to specialize in that particular product. But if you have cost advantage, that is, your production will make it available to the consumers at a cheaper rate, then you should specialize in it so that you can make it will be cheaper for you, then you can sell it out at high profit. So the theory said that a country should specialize in the production of goods and services for which it has a cost advantage over another country. But if it's going to cost that country much more to produce it than it is in another country, then it is not advisable for such country to specialize in that kind of trade. Then the next thing is that he said this be pointed out to bring out the production of goods at a cheaper cost. That's what I was explaining. For example, Nigeria purchases goods like automobiles and electronics from overseas countries and sell commodities like cocoa, granite, food, oil, and so on to them, because those ones they are easy for us to produce than the things that we import. So just take note of that. So having said that, having explained what international trade involves and the principle underlying international trade, we will need to look at the types of international trade. And the first type we'll be looking at is bilateral international trade. Bilateral international trade. So I'm going to clear the screen now and put all there. So bilateral. So there are two major types of international trade. So the first one we're looking at is bilateral. Bilateral international trade is a trade agreement in which two countries exchange goods and services. They exchange goods and services. You give me this, I give you that, between the countries. It occurs when each country tries to balance its payment of receipts separately and individually with each other. So that is called bilateral international trade. And the second one we'll be looking at is called multilateral international trade. Multilateral international trade. So let me bring that up. So for multilateral international trade, we have multilateral international trade is type of international trade in which a country trades with many other countries. So if it is between just two countries, we call that what? Bilateral international trade. But if it is, a country that trades with many other, we call this multilateral international. This ensures international division of labor. It's a type of trade in which many countries exchange their goods and services, e.g. Nigeria trades with USA, with Britain, and with Japan. So multilateral international trade is necessary if the total volume of the world trade is to be raised to its maximum. So there should be division of labor. Okay, let this country be producing this and be supplying to ABC country. Then let B country be producing this and supplying to ABD country, and so on and so forth. So that is what multilateral. So you should be able to differentiate between multilateral trade and bilateral international trade. So having said that about international trade, we need to look quickly into what internal trade is. Internal trade, also known as domestic trade, that international trade is known as foreign trade, but internal trade is known as domestic trade or home trade. And this involves exchange of goods and services among the people within a particular country, within a particular country. International trade involves buying and selling of goods and services within a particular, internal trade rather, involves buying of goods and services within a particular country, but international goes beyond the country, from one country to another, between two countries, or between two or more countries. So let me put up that for internal trade. So let's see. Like I said, internal trade is also known as domestic trade. So you could see that in an objective question, say foreign trade is also called what? That is international trade, or domestic trade or home trade is also known as internal trade. So it involves exchange of goods and services, within a particular country, not between two or more countries. Internal trade involves buying and selling, within a particular Nigeria. For example, the items of internal trade are those goods and services which are produced and sold internally or locally. In Nigeria, for example, such items include yam, coffee, maize, rice, and many other locally manufactured goods. So we can trade it from state to state. Maybe the north is going to bring whatever to the south, and south brings whatever to the north or to the west. So that is about internal trade. So we're going to go to terminologies that are used in international trade. Then we're going to be looking at a couple of them among those terminologies. So for terminologies that are used in international trade, this is said. The first one is free trade. Free trade. Free trade refers to non-restriction on international trade. Non-restriction. Buying and selling can take place between different countries without the imposition of artificial barriers such as absence of custom duties, quotas, embargo, and so on. So there is perfect mobility of commodities and factor circulation between countries. So when you're talking about free trade, there'll be no barriers, there'll be no custom duty, there'll be no, some duty quotas, there have no embargo, there have been no sanctions, there have been nothing that will hinder that trade. So if a trade is under that condition, we call it free trade. So the next thing we'll be looking at under the terminologies is infant industries. So let me clear the screen. So for infant industries are newly established industries. They are still in their tutelage and must be protected from foreign competition to safeguard their survival. So these are part of the terminologies in international trade. So the first terminology we looked at is free trade, while the second one is infant industry. So there is another terminology we have to look at, which is called devaluation. Devaluation, which is the third one. So devaluation is the lowering of the exchange value of a country's currency vis-a-vis, in relation to other countries. This makes imports to be expensive and exports to be more attractive. So it makes it more attractive to export products than to import products. For example, let's take Nigeria for example. The dollar rate is high now to naira. So if you are going to export, you're going to gain more than when you import. When you import, you are going to spend more to pay for the equivalent dollar value. But when you export, you collect in dollar, and when you convert it to naira, it's going to pay more. So devaluation is the lowering of exchange value of a country's currency vis-a-vis other countries. So that is the second terminology that we're looking at. The third terminology that we'll be looking at, that's the third one. So the fourth one we'll be looking at is called depreciation. So let's talk about depreciation. See what that is all about. So depreciation refers to the fall in the value of a country's currency. Depreciation refers to the fall in the value of a country's currency against other currencies as a result of the interplay of the forces of demand and supply. It is the forces of demand and supply that used to cause either appreciation or depreciation of a country's currency. So when there is high demand for what your country is supplying, there will be appreciation of your currency. But when there is low demand, you are always importing, there will be depreciation. Then the next terminology, which is probably the last terminology we're looking at, is jumping. Jumping or dumping. Call it dumping. Dumping is the practice of selling goods in foreign countries at lower prices than what are obtainable in exporting countries. For example, you are selling something in your own country and you are selling it out at a cheaper rate, than what used to be in your country, then that is dumping. Maybe the something doesn't have that much value. You're just trying to offset that particular, so that is dumping. So let me put that up. Dumping is the practice of selling goods in foreign countries at lower price than what are obtainable in the country where it is being exported from. So so in WAEC like that, they can ask you to list terminologies or to list and explain such terminologies. But before you can be able to do that, you just need to understand what it is. So let us now look at the similarities between internal trade and international trade. Similarities. So we're talking about similarities and differences now. Similarities and differences between international and internal trade. similarities and differences between international and national trade. We put this at the same time. Okay. So, similarities and differences. The first one we'll be looking at is the similarities, and we have about 5 similarities between international trade and internal trade. Okay. Let me see. Let me put that up here. So, talking about the similarities. Number one, both international trade and internet trade involve the use of money as a medium of exchange, not trade by barter, but use of money. Then they are also similar in that they both involve a degree of specialization between the trading partner, since specialization causes exchange. That is, a particular country is specialized in this, and that's why it's producing it and exporting it to a particular another country. So they are similar. So number one, they use money as means of exchange. Number two, they are similar in specialization. And number three, they both forms of trade involve activities of middlemen. When you talk about middlemen in trading, who are the middlemen? Middlemen are the people. A middleman is a broker, or a go-between or intermediary to a process of transaction. So the goods will not just jump from the producer and to the consumer in another country. It must pass through an intermediary, and this intermediary will earn a fee or commission in return for the service they render in matching buyers and sellers. So it is the middlemen that find where the product is available, and they are the ones that also find where the product is needed. So if they are able to find where the product is available, they are able to find where the product is needed, then they serve as a middle supplier. Let me call it a middle supplier. So a middleman is a broker or a go-between or an intermediary to a process or to a transaction. So that is what middleman is performing there. So it's both forms they involve the activities of middlemen. Both trade also involve buying and selling of goods and services, and of course that is what trade is all about. So apart from buying let's say vehicles from abroad or selling our own cocoa or whatever to abroad, we can also sell our expertise to abroad, and that is where we have doctors migrating to UK to work as professionals. That's where we have doctors trading. So both of them arise due to inequitable distribution of natural endowment and production resources. What is that one saying? The meaning is that a country cannot have all it needs in order to survive. No, it must have some, while it will be deficient in some. And what is deficient in will be available in another country, and that makes, or in another region, and that makes the need for trade in the first place. So whether international or local. So these are the similarities between the international trade and internal trade, which is home trade. So now let us look at the differences between the two of them. About differences between home trade and international trade. See, want to try and move this up. It won't be able. Let me undo that. Be able to contain everything. So it's just so differences. Now, give it the first two differences there. Differences between international and home trade. Foreign trade involves the exchange of goods and services, acts, it involves the act national frontiers, while international trade involves exchange of goods within the border of a country. So that one goes to international frontiers, while the internal one is within the country. That's one major difference between international trade and foreign. I mean, international trade and local trade, or foreign trade and home trade. So in foreign trade, buyers and sellers use different currencies, whereas buyers and sellers in home trade use the same type of currency. So if you are doing internal trade in Nigeria, it's in naira. But if it is with another country, you're going to use two or more different kind of countries. Then let's go over more. The third one says there is possibility of restriction of trade, or like embargo. And that's what we talked about in free trade, that there's no embargo. If there's no embargo, then that type of trading is called free trade. So this one says there is possibility of restriction, like placing tariff, import duty, export duty, quotas, embargoes, and so on, when goods are exchanged across national boundary, while this does not occur in home trade. So there is no import duty when you're transferring between states within a country. But if it is outside the country, and this is where smuggling comes in from, because people don't want to pay the quotas on top, so they try to smuggle this, and that is why we have the custom officials to get them, to get them arrested for trying to corner their way through. And let me look at the remaining differences here as I clear this point first. So, still talking about differences between foreign trade and local trade. There are differences in systems of weighing and measuring in one country when compared with the other country. A country has one system of such weighing and measuring. So, we might be using kilogram in Nigeria, we might be using tons in another country, but there must be a standard. It must be equivalent. So there are different system of weighing and measuring. Then the difference in transport costs due to distance between buyers and sellers also. Documentation requirement, need for insurance in respect of foreign trade, distinguish foreign trade from home trade. There's no difference in cost of transport or whatever. There's no documentation required in home trade, but in foreign trade there is documentation required. There are also differences in legal systems and culture under international trade, but legal systems are the same in domestic trade. So these are the differences and similarities between international trade and home trade. So we'll soon bring this class to an end. We might not be able to cover the whole lot of subtopics, so that means in the other lesson, as we continue the lesson, we're going to look at more. So I would like you to unmute yourself now and tell me if you truly understand what I've been explaining over the last 30 minutes. So try to unmute yourself now, because you've been muted. Because of the noise around you, that's why you were muted. Try to unmute yourself. Use your video. Yes. I think you've touched the video. Okay, now it's showing. So do you understand it now?
Yes, sir.
So in your own way, what does trade mean? What does it mean?
Well, trade can be referred as the business of buying and selling.
Okay, the action of buying and selling. But when you now say buying and selling what?
Okay, buying and selling, ranging goods and services.
Yes, buying and selling of goods and services. So if I talk about trading, then I'm talking about buying and selling. So it's not only goods, but it also includes what? Services. Can you mention 3 goods that we can buy and sell?
Well, like internationally, we can use with cocoa.
Okay, cocoa. Crude oil, okay. So any other thing like mobile phones, television, all those stuffs. Okay, can you mention 2 services that we can also buy and sell? Because we said Yes, because we say it involves buying and selling of goods and services. So you have mentioned goods. Can you mention two services that we can buy and sell?
Yeah, the means of transportation like Uber.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Like even uh, there are Nigerian pilots that also, they move people abroad through plane, yes or no? And they also
Yes, sir.
move the white to this place. Both our people and the white, whoever is coming to visit, whether on tourism or on business, they move them. So that's a sort of services that are being sold. You can also talk about teaching. There are people that go abroad to go and teach or to go and lecture. So such kind of services are also being traded. I mentioned something. I said trademark. Trademark. So what do you think trademark is about?
The shred is a symbol, a logo,
Yeah, a
or a
symbol,
word that
yes, or
defines the
logo or
company.
word, yes, that belong to a particular company. So, and it is legally backed up so that another company cannot use it. For
Cannot
example,
use it.
yes, for example, within Nigeria, 7 Up is 7 Up. And I think if it is a trademark, if it's an international trademark, then 7 Up is 7 Up all over the world. Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola all over the world. Are you getting that?
Yes, sir.
Close up is close up all over the world. No other product can come and bear that name. Just like Indomie is Indomie. The Indomie you eat, the name is not actually Indomie. Do you know the name?
And they are cheeky, they are
No, the name is
very
Noodle. Name is Noodle. So all of them are noodles. Are you getting me? But if you want to
yes.
go and buy anyone, people will say, I want to buy Indomie. Are you getting that? So
Yes.
Indomie has come to take over even the real name, just like Close Up has come to take over the name of toothpaste. Meanwhile, we have McLean, we have any other, Oral B or whatever they call it. So just like that. Okay, I want to believe you enjoy the class for today.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So next week, by the grace of God, meet on Friday, 4:30 to 5:30, and on Saturday it's going to be 2 hours straight. So Saturday is going to be two subjects. Five. Saturday might be three subjects depending on. That means I will schedule three classes on Saturday. I want to give you this. Yeah. Then
Yes, sir.
Friday will be mathematics. While Saturday will be for the government economics and English. So thank you for your time today. You will see next week. Bye for now.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.